I've always been a huge fan of a famous band from the United States. Their music was everything to me, and I decorated my entire room with posters, photos, and even had a guitar autographed by them. It wasn't just a phase for me, it was a part of who I was. I spent hours listening to their music, reliving every lyric, and dreaming of one day seeing them live. My room was my sanctuary, filled with reminders of my idols. It was my safe space where nothing could harm me, or so I thought. Over time, though, strange things started to happen. It began with little things. A pencil would fall from my desk for no reason, or my pillow would mysteriously slide off the bed when I was sleeping. At first, I shrugged it off, thinking it was just coincidence or the result of my clumsiness. But then it escalated. I started having nightmares every single night. Terrifying dreams where I was trapped in darkness with strange sounds and figures that I couldn't explain. One day, I went to school as usual. My mom stayed home that day, and I didn't think much of it. She always had the house to herself while I was at school. Little did I know, something terrifying was about to happen while I was away. By the time I returned, things had taken a dramatic turn. My mother was visibly shaken, pale, and on edge. I didn't understand what had happened, but I soon would. That's when I learned that the very thing I cherished most had become the source of unimaginable fear. One day, as usual, I left for school. My mom decided to stay home that afternoon, which was nothing out of the ordinary. I had no idea what was about to unfold while I was away. In the middle of the afternoon, she started hearing a strange sound coming from my room. It was a melody, soft at first, then growing louder and clearer, as if someone was playing my guitar. The sound was unmistakable. It was coming from my room. My mom froze for a moment, confused and uneasy. She stood there, listening intently, not sure what to make of it. As she walked closer to my room, her heart began to race. What she saw when she opened the door would haunt her for the rest of her life. A man with long, dark hair was sitting on my bed, playing my guitar. His hands moved with unnatural precision, and the music he played was something beyond human capability. But what struck her the most was his appearance. He looked like a shadow, his features hidden beneath the darkness, barely discernible. The only thing clear was the guitar. It was the same one I had, the one I cherished above all else. The room was suffocatingly cold, and the air felt heavy with dread. My mother stood there, paralyzed with fear, unable to speak or move. The man continued playing, his figure almost dissolving into the shadows as if he wasn't truly there. Every strum of the guitar sent chills down her spine. But then, as soon as she gathered the courage to speak and demanded to know who he was, everything changed. The moment she uttered those words, the man vanished. The guitar fell to the bed with a thud, and in an instant, the room was silent. The air felt thinner, emptier, as if something had just been taken. My mom rushed out of the room, terrified and shaken to her core, knowing deep down that what she had witnessed wasn't something of this world. My mom was completely shaken by what she had just witnessed. She stood there, staring at the guitar on the bed, trying to make sense of it. But nothing made sense. The image of the shadowy figure, playing my guitar with such unnatural skill, kept replaying in her mind. A deep sense of dread filled her heart. and she knew that something evil had been in that room, something that didn't belong there. It was a presence, dark and malevolent, and she felt it in every inch of her skin. She couldn't explain it, but the fear in her gut was undeniable. In a panic, she felt the overwhelming need to protect me, to do something, anything, to rid the house of whatever force had attached itself to my things. She didn't even think twice about what she was doing. Without knowing why, she gathered everything she could find in my room, the posters of the band I love, the photos I had hanging on the wall, the t-shirts with their logos, and, of course, my beloved guitar. Every item, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, seemed to carry a dark weight now. My mom quickly piled everything into a huge stack in the middle of the living room. As she did, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was doing something crucial, something that had to be done to end whatever evil had taken root in our home. It was like an instinct had taken over, one that told her to destroy everything. Her hands trembled as she gathered the last of my belongings, not really sure what to do with them, but knowing deep down that they had to be destroyed, with no clear plan but a gut feeling urging her forward. She took the pile of my personal items and set them on fire. She watched as the flames devoured the photographs, the shirts, and the posters, everything that had once felt like a part of me. As the fire crackled and the smoke rose, she hoped, prayed, that it would be enough. But deep inside, she knew that whatever had been in my room, whatever had touched my things, wasn't done yet. When I came home that afternoon, I was taken aback by the sight in the backyard. A large pile of my belongings was burning fiercely in the fire, the smoke thick and black, swirling up into the sky. I stood frozen for a moment, unsure of what I was seeing. It felt unreal, like something out of a nightmare. The heat from the flames seemed to radiate a strange, unsettling energy, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still wrong. My mom saw me standing there and rushed over, her face pale with fear. She told me what had happened while I was at school. She explained everything. The shadowy man sitting on my bed, playing my guitar like a ghost, and the music that had filled the room before he vanished. As she spoke, I felt a chill run through me. It was all so surreal, and yet I couldn't deny what she had experienced. Despite the terror, I felt a strange sense of relief. The fire had burned everything, the guitar, the posters, the photos. The house felt lighter somehow, as if that malevolent presence had been released. Even with the sense of relief, though a dark question kept gnawing at me, what exactly had I been dealing with? Who was the man that had appeared in my room, and why had he been drawn to my guitar? It was all too much to make sense of. The fact that the guitar, an object that had meant so much to me, had somehow been tied to this dark event only deepened the mystery. I tried to push the thoughts away, but the unease lingered. The fear of the unknown, of what I couldn't explain, still haunted me. The fire had consumed the objects, but what about the evil? Was it truly gone, or was it just waiting, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to return? The questions and the fear never quite left me. Even after everything was burned, the experience never fully left my mind. The terror of that day haunted me for months. I couldn't shake the image of the man playing my guitar, his shadowy form sitting on my bed. It felt like I was still living in that moment. I was so traumatized that I couldn't bear to sleep in my own room anymore. For months, I slept in my mom's room, hoping that the closeness would somehow keep me safe from whatever that thing was. As time passed, we started to heal, but the memories of that afternoon remained vivid. Every time I closed my eyes, I could almost hear the music again, and the image of the man would flash before me. It was like a scar on my mind that wouldn't fade. My mom, too, seemed to carry a weight from what happened, so she tried to act like everything was fine. We both moved on with our lives, but the unease never really went away. There were nights when I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if we had truly escaped whatever it was that had invaded our lives. Had burning everything been enough, or had we merely pushed it back only for it to resurface when we least expected it? Even now, I still question if what happened was just the beginning of something much darker, something we might not have been prepared for. The fear, while lessened, still lingers in the back of my mind. I wish I could say that I have moved on completely, but there's always a part of me that wonders if we really got rid of it or if we're just waiting for the next chapter to unfold. That fear, that nagging uncertainty, is something I carry with me, no matter how much time passes. When my grandmother's health began to deteriorate, my family decided to move into her house temporarily to take care of her. It wasn't an easy decision, but we couldn't leave her alone in that big, old house. I remember the drive there. The house was in a remote area, surrounded by dense trees and far from the noise of the city. The air felt different, heavier, almost oppressive. The house itself was ancient. Its wooden floors creaked with every step, and the walls seemed to whisper with the wind. Despite the eerie atmosphere, we settled in quickly, trying to focus on taking care of Grandma. She was weak, but always kind, even as her health worsened. After about a week, she passed away peacefully in her sleep. The house fell silent, but it wasn't the comforting kind of silence. It was the kind that clung to your skin, making you feel like you weren't alone. Sadness filled the air, but there was something else, something I couldn't quite explain. Not long after the funeral, strange things began happening. At first, it was small, an object falling here or there, doors creaking open without reason. My parents brushed it off, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we had disturbed something that didn't want us there. At first, it was just little things we could almost ignore. A glass would fall off the counter, shattering on the floor, even though no one was near it. Plates would slip from the drying rack as if an unseen hand had pushed them. We tried to laugh it off, saying it was just bad luck or maybe the old house settling. But it didn't stop there. The doors became the next focus of the activity. They would creak open or slam shut, seemingly at random. It wasn't just the wind. There was no draft strong enough to move them like that. One time, the front door flew open so forcefully that it shook the entire house, and yet, when we checked outside, there was no one there. My parents tried to stay calm, insisting there had to be a logical explanation, but I could see the unease growing in their eyes. My siblings and I stopped wandering the house alone, sticking close to one another whenever we could. The air in the house began to feel thicker, heavier, as if something was watching us, waiting. Each incident chipped away at our nerves, and while we tried to ignore it, deep down, we all knew something wasn't right. It was around 3 a.m. when the knocking started. Loud, deliberate, and insistent. It echoed through the house like a drumbeat. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but the sound was too real. One by one, I could hear the rest of my family waking up. My dad was the first to get out of bed, muttering something about rude neighbors. But as we all gathered near the front door, the atmosphere felt wrong. The knocking continued, growing louder with each passing second. My dad swung the door open, ready to confront whoever was out there, but there was no one. The porch was empty, the night outside eerily silent. The cold air sent shivers down my spine as I peered past him into the darkness. We all stood there, frozen, listening for footsteps or voices, but there was nothing. Then my mom, usually the quiet one, stepped forward. She stared into the emptiness as if she could sense something we couldn't see. Her voice was firm but trembling when she spoke. "Whatever you are, you're not welcome here. Leave now and never come back." It wasn't a request, it was a command. The knocking stopped as suddenly as it had started. My mom closed the door, locking it tightly, and told us all to go back to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what had just happened, wondering if the knocking was truly gone or if it was waiting for another chance to return. The next morning, my mom admitted she hadn't slept at all, while the rest of us had nervously drifted off. She said the noises didn't stop. They weren't just knocks this time. There were faint whispers, like voices echoing from the walls, and the sound of something dragging across the floor in the living room. She hadn't wanted to alarm us, so she stayed in bed, clutching her rosary, silently praying until the first rays of sunlight crept through the curtains. I could see the exhaustion and fear in her eyes, but she was determined. That night, before going to bed, she lit candles and walked through the house, whispering prayers in every corner. Her voice was calm but steady, as if she was standing her ground against whatever was tormenting us. We all watched her, silently hoping that her faith would be enough to protect us. While my mom prayed, I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. It was subtle at first, a chill in the air, the sense that someone was watching me. I glanced over my shoulder several times, expecting to catch a shadow slipping into the hallway, but there was nothing. Still, the sensation of being observed was so strong that it felt like something invisible was just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to show itself. That night I lay in bed, covers pulled up to my chin, too afraid to move. The silence in the house was almost suffocating, but it was better than the alternative. My heart pounded as I listened, straining to catch any sign of movement. Even though the sounds eventually stopped, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was haunting us wasn't gone, it was simply biding its time. After my mom's prayers that night, the house finally fell silent. The eerie knocks, the whispers, and the unexplainable movements stopped altogether. For the first time in days, we were able to sleep without waking up in fear. The heavy, oppressive feeling that had blanketed the house seemed to lift, and a fragile sense of normalcy began to return. Despite the relief, I couldn't shake the fear that lingered deep inside me. Even though the strange occurrences had ceased, the memory of those nights felt etched into the walls of the house. Every creak of the floorboards or gust of wind rattling a window made my heart race, as if the silence itself was just a pause before something worse. I still catch myself reflecting on what happened, questioning what we encountered and why it chose to torment us. My mom insists that her prayers drove it away, and I want to believe her. But part of me wonders if it's truly gone or simply waiting. The house feels different now, like a place with a shadow that no amount of sunlight can fully erase. Though life has moved on, the scars of that experience remain, a constant reminder that some things are better left unexplained.